Hi, folks. I'm Tom, and I'm an alcoholic. And I have been trying to get in touch with Marilyn all day today. I left at least three messages. She did not return. She did not return. And then suddenly she's here. So I just find that astonishing. And I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to share with you some experience, strength, and hope. I live in Oakland, California. I have visited Canada on more than one occasion. I was in Toronto for the International Convention when it was held there. When it was held in Montreal, I was too crazy to travel. I was in Los Angeles that weekend. I literally could not get out of my head and get out of the state to get here, but I'm glad to connect with you this evening. And I love Marilyn. Marilyn, I um, like we hung out together and we had friends together, but we never talked until the last few years. And she's good company. Some people aren't. I don't know if you've noticed that in recovery. Some people are hard work. And up to now, Marilyn hasn't been until she refused to return my phone calls today. But that's all right. That's just we'll work that out. Anyway, Tom, alcoholic. Um, I'm happy to talk about 11 step stuff. I am a professional God person. I mean, it's so weird. There are lots of us in recovery from a variety of traditions, and I find we frequently have similar problems. 1978, so I've been at this for a long time. I'm a member of the Jesuit community. That's my training and my most of my associations are there. And the founder of the order 500 plus years ago did an awful lot of stuff with prayer meditation. And so I've learned a lot of that. But I'm a messy learner and I'm a reluctant learner. And one of the things Ignatius of Loyola would stress is repetition, 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 repetition. It's one of the ways we learn. And I'm an experience of that. To repeat the most familiar things really, really help. Um, I got sober a long time ago. I was intervened on. Members of my community intervened on me. We had a new boss who knew me very well. We had taught together. I thought I'd be a high school teacher my whole life, and I was for 7 years, but not since. Anyway, he was also a teacher, and he saw me at work as a very loud alcoholic, and he was the new boss, and I got sober because I was intervened on. And went into a 3-week treatment program here in Berkeley, California. I was in studies, got out of treatment on a Friday and began my third year of studies on Monday. And lots of brain stuff, lots of reading. Um, I went to the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, which was a great place to study in the 1970s. We had 12 different schools, 9 different denominations, and we studied together. And so you could take classes from anybody, and I had some wonderful professors who weren't members of my tribe, but they were sure wonderful professors, and I sure learned lots. And I was told you keep learning. You don't graduate and turn your brain off. You keep learning. And if you leave school aware that you have a lot to learn, you've done school right. Instead of, I figured it out, I read the book. So my third year of studies, I went to meetings. I don't know if I went every day, but boy, I went to meetings. I was 29 years old when I got sober, and I'm now in my 79th year. So I've been doing this for a while. And I think one of the biggest changes over the last years is I'm willing to practice. I'm willing to keep practicing. I'm not a musical person, but I like music. And one of my friends, who's a major music person, um, said one of their friends lived in the same apartment building that Horowitz lived in. And Horowitz, one of the great piano performers of the 20th century. And she would hear him practicing every morning. And the practice was it was the most basic things. And I understand that in terms of prayer, meditation, the seeking, the looking, the practice, seeking only knowledge of God's will for us. And my sponsor was a very bright man, older than me by about 9 years, but a different generation. I mean, that's a lot of time. And he was also a priest of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. They made him a Monsignor. And a sad little Catholic joke is I would tell people my sponsor was a sober Monsignor, and they are very rare. Monsignors were invented during the Avignon papacy in the 1300s, and it's not at all important. But anyway, it's kind of like having um, a knight as your sponsor. He was thoughtful. He was educated. He was wise, and he was kind. And those are four different things. I'm very and for well over 45 years we were in conversation. And I would watch him do prayer and meditation. And I would watch him, there's talking, but then there's behavior. So on one occasion, I asked him, he was having a really good day, and I asked him, what's this God's will stuff? How do you know what God's will is? And he said, it is God's will for each of us to have a life. Go get one. Which means making mistakes, trying things out, seeing what fits, seeing what doesn't taste good. Find out. I was going to go to the Al-Anon convention in Albuquerque. They have one every 5 years too. And I hope to be in Vancouver, so I'll see all you cute Canadians up there. Um, uh, but I'm going to go to Albuquerque. This was maybe 2 Julys ago. Bought a ticket and had a place to stay and all these things. Albuquerque, New Mexico. New Mexico is not Texas and it is not Arizona. It is a unique part of the universe. And I go there open. Anyway, the day my plane was supposed to fly out, I got a text message on my phone from United Airlines saying your flight's been canceled. You can't get there today. You can't get there tomorrow. Maybe the weekend. And I flapped around and did things, and it was just not going to be possible to get there. And so I stayed home that weekend. But I mentioned this to some of my supposedly spiritual friends. And I said, the plane got canceled. And the person said, well, I guess God didn't want you to go to Albuquerque. And my response was, I think you have God mixed up with United Airlines. United Airlines canceled 800 flights that day out of Denver. Don't blame God. It's United craziness, not God. So I'm not as pious as you'd think about things. I think things happen. What I'm responsible for is my response. And I don't want to be a jerk. I mean, it's just life is hard. A lot of things are really awful. So get a life. And you try things out and you see what's there. I was a teacher. I was going to be a teacher my whole life, seeking only knowledge of God's will for us. And I taught drunk for 3 years. And I was a very successful teacher. I was in my 20s. It was in the very fun, active, perky stage of alcoholism. I taught history. I got along with kids really well. In fact, I went back last May to the 50th anniversary of kids I taught in 1974. I was the only teacher that showed up, and now they're all grandfathers and retired with grandkids. And but they saw me drunk. But they saw me. They now know I'm a sober person, and some of them are sober people. And a couple have married alcoholics, and we talk about that stuff. This May, I'm going to go for the 45th reunion of kids I taught when I was sober. And I'm going to drive down and not to fly down and spend time with them. But I got to the point where I didn't like kids anymore. I was older, and they're always 17 years old. And I was older, they're always 17 years old. And I was angry all the time. I was sober going to meetings, but I didn't have any Al-Anon. So I didn't understand that a lot of things are none of my business and I could leave them alone. I was chasing kids. I was yelling at kids. I was trying to change kids. I was so angry. I was the angriest guy on campus. And I knew that I was in trouble. And I wanted to change, and there was an opportunity to go into administration. I applied for that job. Thank God I didn't get it. And then leave the school and do some other things. And I asked my sponsor, what's God's will? And he said, well, what are your options? And I had two or three options. One, of course, go to Europe. What a good idea. That's always a good idea. Find something there. What could go wrong? And then moving here to the San Francisco Bay Area, or as we say, the Oakland Bay Area, and I could do some on the street social work stuff. So Terry said, write the pros and cons, pros and cons, pros and cons, and we'll talk about it. And I know that's a way of making decisions. What are the pluses and the minuses of this and that and this? It's very boring to do that kind of stuff. And I'm not a writer, but I did it, and then I had these, a page or two or three of crap, and I showed it to him, and I was expecting him to reflect on it and study it, and you know, weigh the scales of justice like sponsors are supposed to do. And he just looked at it and he said, okay. And I said, so what? Okay. He said, well, in your present job, as a teacher, millions of rules, millions of regulations, bells ring all day long. You are not your own person. You have to be there. And you stayed sober for 4 years with all of this structure. And he said, the new job looks like there's no structure at all. I mean, you'll be on the street. You'll have to invent this as you go along. And I said, yeah, that's what it looks like. And I said, so what should I do? And he said, well, the question is, do you want to see if you can stay sober there too? This was not being helpful. And I said, what should I do? And he said, you can do either one. It can only be a terrible mistake. You've made many mistakes to get here. You're going to continue making many mistakes till the day you're dead, until the day you're dead. If it's wrong, you promptly admit it and then go do something else. I mean, how is this for seeking God's will? I mean, I want, that lovely thing about burning bushes in Exodus and stuff and God talking to you out of the fire. I like that. In the Catholic tradition, there's always a talking statue or a weeping Jesus. There must be some trick. And there's no trick. You try things. You see what works. Now, I took the new job, stayed with it for 3 years. And then I've since moved on to do other things. And I found out it wasn't a very good fit. I could do it, but at great personal cost. And so I made sure I hired people who could do a much better job than I ever could. So knowledge of God's will for us, it is to have a life, which means, what does it mean to be alive? The second step talks about getting restored to sanity, but it's getting restored to being alive. And people who are alive seem to have work, projects, interests, activities, something. That's really important. They seem to have friends, family, relationships. My sponsor talks about friends, companions, and allies, which we develop over years. And I mean over years. That's a real important part of seeking God's will. It's not just about me and God, me and God. It's me and us. Pope Francis, whom I like a lot, talked about a relationship with the higher power. He said God, but the higher power, people on earth, people on the planet and the earth. And I want to be involved in that. I spent part moving some things around and getting my hands dirty. I consider that part of step 11. And then to have some enjoyment and pleasure and gratitude, that's having a life. And it can only be a terrible mistake. There are so many things that blow up and fall down. Um, I know we sometimes talk about forcing the outcome. You know, some of us have been accused of that, trying to force the outcome. It's more of an Al-Anon conversation than an AA conversation, but it's a good one to have. And one of my mentors talked about, it was Lucy talking to Charlie Brown, and Lucy said to Charlie Brown, "How many times does 5 go into 3?" And Charlie Brown says, "5 doesn't go into 3." And Lucy says, "It does if you push." I want to be aware of when I get myself in those positions, because it's just not a good idea. I mean, a lot of the spiritual work is showing up and paying attention and telling the truth and letting go of the results. The showing up, the paying attention, be here, look around, what's going on, telling the truth, and letting go of the results. Knowledge of God's will for us to be alive. I mean, I'm a pretty active guy. I'm not as active as Marilyn. She shames me with how busy she is. She flies to some places I don't even want to read about in the paper. But when I'm faced with what's God's will? I think it's all very much wrapped up with hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It is God's will that I keep an eye on that. Don't get too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired, or everything's worse. And Terry told me this. Here's how, when you're faced with a conundrum, a mess, a sponsee who has a lot of difficulty, capital D, Terry would say the 3 questions he would ask. Number 1, what's practical? What's possible? And what's simple? Now that's the direction I want my life to go in. I want it to be pretty simple. I want to be very practical. Ignatius Loyola was a very practical person in terms of a lot of things. Prayer and meditation. I mean, there's a zillion ways to do this in that spiritual experience. It talks about William James and the lectures he gave, the varieties of religious experience. If you just read the title, you know what's in the book. There's a lot of ways people do this. I have to find ways that work for me. So if part of my quiet time, my prayer time is with a candle or incense or a bell, I get to use that. If those don't help, I don't have to use it. If I like to stand, stand. If I need to sit, sit. When I was a novice, I'd been in the order for like 60 years. You'd think I'd be a much better person by now, but it was, I was 18. I knew everything, and I was 18. But they just threw us right in the meditation pool. I mean, the bells ringing, and we were to stand for, what is it? Kneel for 15 minutes, a bell would ring. Stand for 15 minutes, a bell would ring. Sit for 15 minutes, a bell would ring. And there was some meditation book that was given to us. We were supposed to chew on it. And I later asked, well, why the bells and why the sit, kneel, stand stuff? And the response was to keep you awake. I mean, it's very pragmatic. And I find there are some things I do and there are some things I don't do. I help out in a local parish. It's really helpful for me. It gets me out of my room and out of my head. And I have to associate with others. And it's like going to a meeting. In fact, after this, I'm going to be going to my usual Tuesday night meeting. And we've got 30 or 40 people there. And some of them are so young. I mean, we don't even resent the same people. They don't, some of the people I resent, they don't even know who they are. It's very disturbing. But I'm going to go to that meeting to participate. The varieties. There are a lot of ways people do this, stay practical. Knowledge of God's will for us, what's practical, what's possible, what's simple. And I want to be able to take action. And I can, this is, you'll know a little bit about me with this. I'd rather think about prayer and meditation than do it. I'd rather tell others how to do it than do it. I resist it on a regular basis. There's a couple of books I use for meditation, very basic things, nothing very esoteric. But I want to pay attention to wherever the Spirit moves me. And that can be to a lot of different places. And I think it's what's practical, what's possible, what's simple, indoors or outdoors, standing or sitting or kneeling. I like the serenity prayer a lot. And I heard a guy in Texas talk about the serenity prayer. You know, God, give me serenity because I have to make decisions and the power to carry it out. I have to make decisions. And there are things I cannot change. And I'm a lot closer to 80 than 60, let me tell you. I don't have the time to waste on stuff I can't change, and I don't have the energy to waste on time I can't. I lay down for a while this afternoon and I slept a little bit. That becomes a part of my day. Like old people, mornings are pretty good. Anyway, this guy in Texas said, here are 3 things I cannot change. I cannot change the past. So don't waste any time trying to do it. I cannot change the truth. And I cannot change you. But what's the truth? Gravity, the speed of light. Isaac Newton, the laws of physics, what goes up comes down. To every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I mean, that's the truth. I was talking with a sponsee, and for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, this person was really full of energy and joy and happiness, up. And then there was a slump. Everything's awful. I hate everything. And he wanted me to fix him. And I said, there's nothing to fix. This is the laws of physics. You went up, you're going to go down. It's the law. And it's one reason why, I don't want to go way up because I don't want to come way down. What goes up comes down. I want to live in the broad middle. That's the truth for me. I can't change you. Loving someone does not change them, it changes me. And hating someone does not change them, it changes me. So I want to be really careful of my relationships. I can get cynical and I can get snarky and I can get angry. I have to be careful with what I let in because I respond. What can I change? This is part of prayer and meditation. What can I change? What's God's will? There are 3 things I can change. I can change my thinking, my behavior, and my attitudes. And that's the work of the program. So when I'm looking at God's will for us and the power to carry that, it has to do with my thinking, my behavior, and my attitudes. My sponsor made his bed every morning. He told me that if he did that, he'd stay sober all day. So whenever I made my bed, I'd call him just to tell him that I made my bed, but it might be, once every 3 weeks. I'm a busy man. But I made my bed this morning, hoping to stay sober. I did a few other things this morning, hoping to stay sober. I knew I'd be here tonight. Show up. I'm cooking dinner for the community tomorrow night. I needed to do some preparation. That's work. Get it together. Do a little planning. Ask God or help. I frequently have a white flag around here but I probably have given it to someone else. Just that I'm not in charge. The war is over. I've lost, but there are some things I can do, and I want to do those things. What's practical, what's possible, what's simple concerning my thinking, my behavior, and my attitudes. And then life is good. I looked up Herbert Spencer just to see who he was because I had no idea. And in 1900, 1890, he was one of the most well-known writers in the English language. I think he's a Brit. But he had an opinion on everything, and everybody quoted Herbert Spencer. He was just a major voice. The older he got, the crankier he got. And his last years were very cranky, just so you know. So you don't have to imitate Herbert Spencer, even if you quote Herbert Spencer. So that's my plan. I don't want to be the cranky old man who spends all day disapproving of everybody. I want to be alive. I want to have some work and some love and some play. I want to participate in this whole business of being people. I want to be an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. What a good bunch to hang out with. And it's life-giving for me. It's life-giving for me. On my own, I'll watch Judge Judy all day, thinking that I'm accomplishing great things. Not true. Is that 35 minutes? I think that's close to 35 minutes. I have opinions on everything else, but it might be time to stop. Anyway, keep it real simple. Keep it real simple. That's what I know. Also, William James' book is very interesting. It's a series of lectures he gave in Scotland. He was fascinated by the subject of spiritual experience, religious experience, and he did a lot of research. He interviewed a lot of people. He has a lot to say, old William James. And he also said the way his brain worked, zigzags and interruptions. That was his thinking process. Zigzags and interruptions. He wrote his wife a lot. He kept on going to the couch with the cold compress on his forehead. He'd get strung out and overdone a whole bunch. One of his brothers drank himself to death. His older brother moved to England and wrote creepy short stories. The James family. This is the last part. This is from the 12 and 12. And it says, in step 11, we saw that if a higher power had restored us to sanity and had enabled us to live with some peace of mind in a sorely troubled world, then such a higher power was worth knowing better by as direct means as possible. The persistent use of meditation and prayer we found did open the channel, so where there had been a trickle, there was now a river, which led to sure power and safe guidance from God as we were increasingly better able to understand him. And I like that. There's lots I don't know, and I regularly am an idiot. And my defects of character flourish on a regular basis. But today's good. At the moment, it's good. And I'm longing for Vancouver. You know, if we can get across the border, I'm really longing for Vancouver. So that's what I know. Marilyn, you can fill in if we have more time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John, and thank you so much, Father Tom, and thank you for being my neighbor. I'm thrilled that we already have hands up. I just want to say to the gentleman that the ladies are dusting you. Where are your hands? My friend Eva, please come on in.
Hey there, Alice. Thank you. Wow. Thank you for your talk, Father. One of the questions that sort of came up for me during your talk was one of the things I've always struggled with was how do I ask God for help? I'm not exactly quite sure how to do that. I'm going back to like, being a child and like not, maybe I'm praying for the wrong things. Maybe I'm being selfish or self-centered. Um, what is it that I know to do before I prepare myself to pray? Like, do I do a preparation? Just your thoughts on that. Thank you.
I think it can be really just help works for me. Um, I think what some of us do is we try to ask a question to manipulate the higher power, or we negotiate, or we tell the higher power how to do this. And by the way, here's what I want done. I'd like it done. We give a lot of advice to God. I think it's just fine to say, help. I don't know what to do next. And God, as I understand God, is really interested in coordinating with us. It's not like I have to win God's favor. It's there, the care of God. And I trust that the higher power is not a jerk and not a monster and not a psychopathic dictator, but it has my interests at heart. Keep it simple and just ask for help. And you can always just stand in the middle of an airport and wave a white handkerchief, and someone will come to your aid because they'll know you are in trouble, and they'll probably ask if you're a friend of Bill W's.
What a great answer, and thank you for the white flag. Jan, you are up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Father. That was fantastic. Would you mind speaking to a question that I have? How has meditation changed you?
It slowed me down. It slowed me down. It helps me pay attention to things. One of the ones I did this morning was just get outside, sit down, and look around. The garden is always different. There's always different stuff happening there. And sometimes my meditation is sweeping the sidewalk. It's very Zen. Sweep the sidewalk. And sometimes it's pulling weeds, but I have to be mad enough to pull weeds. And I my mother's father was a farmer and my father years. So there's something about plants in the earth that make a difference for me. And I pay attention, but the meditation, it slows me down. It helps me pay attention. A lot of times I just breathe and look and listen. And I have books because I always have books around me. But I was reading something on breath in the last month. And this person, this book, I think I believe 30% of the book. I'm a little cynical. Anyway, but he said, we breathe 23,000 times a day. That can't be right. But then how many times a minute and times 60 times 24? And it's 22, 23, 24,000 times. But I can, for 10 minutes, breathe in a conscious, focused way. And it helps slow me down. It helps take the edge off. It brings oxygen into the system. Breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. You can also do mouth. They're both good. Just breathe and the paying attention. Mary Oliver, who's a poet I like, and she said, some instructions for living life. Hold on. Pay attention. Focus, right? Be astonished. Tell about it. That's not bad. That's not bad. She doesn't say yell about it, preach about it, nag it. Just tell about it. The things that are amazing and good. I have a couple of sponsees and I try to return phone calls within 24 hours. And I try to not be impatient. I don't call them back after 10 o'clock at night because I don't believe in anything after 10 o'clock at night. But mornings I'm pretty optimistic and flexible most mornings. So that's when I return phone calls.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Lorraine, you're up.
Thank you, Alice. I am Lorraine. I'm alcoholic. Tom, I could listen to you talk for hours. I could just listen to you forever. I can so see you and Marilyn together because of your senses of humor. It really matches. Anyway,
She's very funny for an alcoholic.
she really is funny.
She's also
Um,
very funny for a scientist. Those are two different kinds of funny, but it's interesting. Yeah.
yes. Yes. Um, Anyway, you just reminded me of that Emily Dickinson quote that says something like, "The soul should stand ajar, waiting for the ecstatic experience." I think it's something like that. Don't quote me, but it's close. I
Mhm.
love it when you were talking about what can I change, my thinking, my behavior, my attitudes, and then I thought, wait, I can't change my thinking. But then you gave the caveat about asking God, so I'm like, oh, okay, right, because I know how to do that. Anyway. I'm newly sober again for my second time at 1,135 days. And so lately I've been thinking a lot about free will and how this beautiful gift that we were given and of free will and, how, yeah, free will, God's will, self will, I go through all these little things in my head. So I don't know. What do you think about free will and God's will?
You're not going to figure it out. So just start with that. We get to make, I believe that I get to make choices, and there's a lot of things I'm not in charge of, but I get to make choices. And I want to participate in this whole business of building the earth and making this to be a better place. I think that's God's will. But there's a whole series of very angry arguments in the 1600s, the 15, 16, and 1700s about that topic. And you can read about them if you want, but it won't keep you sober. It's really important to stay sober one day at a time. And it is God's will for us to be here now and to say hello to each other. That's what I'm praying. And to be people with each other. That's God's will. My understanding of whatever the spiritual energy is, it makes us more human, not less human. More human, not less human. So it doesn't shut me down, it perks me up. There's is a second century saint of the Greek church, a fellow named Irenaeus. And I think he was eaten by lions or something. It's a very interesting story. But one of his lines is, the glory of God is the person fully alive. That's God's will. Wake up, come back to life, come back to life. But fully alive means all of me and confusion and this very messy thing of being people, and there's lots of choices we get to make. But predestination, John Calvin, all that's a historical thing, but it's really important not to drink today and to keep going to meetings. That's pretty much, I'm sure of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Bill, thank you so much for diversifying the questions. Come on in.
Thank you so much, Alice, and thank you everyone in service for a beautiful meeting. Tom, first of all, let me applaud you for 60 years of dedication to the Lord and another 47 or 48 years of dedication to our wonderful program. I did not have that staying power, but we're both here right now. And when Marilyn introduced you and talked about Father Terry, who's no longer here in the flesh, but here in the spirit, it was with some adoration. And you talked about this Ignatius of Loyola. And I thought about St. Francis, who we quote a lot for our 11-step prayer, whether it's attributed to him, whether he wrote it or not, it doesn't matter. The question is, St. Francis did not know he was a saint, and he wasn't a saint all of his life because I studied it. He was more of a reprobate, more like me. So the question is, can you achieve the status where someday, decades or centuries from now, we'll be quoting Father Tom 94610, or could
Oh,
you
I'm
sainthooded
that
in
is
your
such an
order?
that's a very dangerous place that's a very dangerous road to go down, and you'll end up dead or drunk or killing others. Don't do that. Don't do that. This is in God's hands, and in 5,000 years, who knows? I'm very suspicious of people who claim special status, because I love we're all, it's another drunk on the bus, a worker among workers. My sponsor, he said a couple of things. The reason the program works is we're not all crazy on the same day. That's one of the reasons. And the highest rank anybody gets in AA is sober, whether it's 30 days or 30 years. I mean, I got sober during the bicentennial year, the third edition of the Big Book, the great ships coming into New York Harbor. We had an election that year, and I was sober for the election, and I was a complete lunatic. I remember it was in Berkeley in November. The votes were being counted, and I was yelling and screaming and shouting and yelling and screaming and shouting. And the next morning, I woke up very hungover, and I didn't know that you could just be hungover because you had too many awful emotions all at once. But you can. And I'm still sober, but I don't worry about any of that stuff. All of Blanche, who's one of my mentors from the Baptist tradition, she would quote things from Baptist hymns. And I think one of them is, I don't fear what the future holds because I know who holds the future. I think that's a Baptist song. And when I remember that, that helps. This is all in God's good time, not mine. My job is to be here today. And I see Marilyn V from Los Angeles. Hi, Marilyn. What can I do for you?
Hello there, Father Tom. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing your experience, strength, and your hope with us today. And thank everyone here at Fellowship of the Spirit. I'm at this place in my spirituality in this program where I feel like I'm just it's a routine. We're talking step 11 about improving our conscious contact with God. And I remember early on, I was really zealous and always trying to improve my conscious contact and doing the 11th step in the morning, in the evening, praying throughout the day, checking, all the boxes, right? And I was really enthusiastic, and I could just feel this relationship that I was establishing with this power. And the last few days, I've been reflecting, and it seems like now it's a routine. And I don't know if you ever experienced that in your life. And if you have, I'd like you to maybe help me with this or give me a nudge or a push, because I feel like I'm just doing it now. Because
Every so often, you got to shake it up. You got to go to meetings in different parts of town. You need to use different meditation books. You have to have a different routine. It's kind of like dating somebody, and the first 5 dates are sensational, and then you notice that they fart and snore, and you have to rearrange everything. There's changes that have to happen, and every so often you have to adjust. And I found there were times I really needed a new meeting, and there were times I really needed to read something new, because I don't like stale. I don't like stale, and I don't like bored, and it happens a lot. So be willing to shake it up a little. Yeah. Yeah. You can always ask God for help, but that's very dangerous, because you never know what's going to happen. It can be really awful. Yeah.
Rochelle, would you please come in?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Rochelle. I'm alcoholic. Thanks so much, Tom. That was great. I often kind of experiment with how to communicate with my higher power when I'm praying. So I'd love to hear your opinion about this if you have one. When you are praying, do you have a preference in terms of like more formalized prayers, more like talking to God? Like what allows you to connect with your higher power, the way that you like see fit?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I use words a lot. I mean, I'm literate and I read and I talk a lot. I've preached a lot, all those things. And so one of the ways I use to pray is use my imagination. One of my sisters-in-law is from a Mormon background, and she's one of the best people on earth. Her father was the youngest of 36 children of 6 wives, so it's serious. But she will use the image of God as light, and then she'll sit and let the light saturate her. And she'll breathe 10 times and 10 times and just be in the light. And when praying for someone, hold them in the palms of your hand in the light and just breathe. So there's no words. I'm not telling God what to do or how to do it. I have, of course. I pray for, but I'm careful with what I pray for. Teresa of Avila said there's more tears cried over answered prayers than anything else she knows. Like, oh God, give me a relationship. That's not specific enough. This could get really weird. I want to relate good hygiene, a good paying job, knife and fork. Be very clear on relationships.
Father Tom, it was just beautiful to have you here this evening. Thank you so much for saying yes to us. I want to turn the meeting back over to John